That evening, the Toronto sky began to darken. A light drizzle fell, dampening the congested streets. At a major intersection in Scarborough, car horns blared in a chaotic chorus as people rushed home from work and school. Among the crowd, a girl in her school's navy polo and khaki pants stood on the roadside, slowly pushing her scooter. Her name was Sarah Tremblay, a grade 12 student at a local secondary school. Her scooter had just died after hitting a deep puddle. She pulled over with a panicked look on her face, terrified of being late. Her mother was sick at home, and her father had died years ago in a construction accident. Since then, Sarah had become a small pillar of support for the family, helping her mother with their small, home-based catering business. She tried to start the scooter again and again, but only a choked, mechanical gasp responded. "Oh God, please. Just start," she muttered, her voice tight with anxiety. Before she could collect herself, a Toronto police cruiser pulled up nearby. Two officers got out. One was in full uniform, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. The name tag on his chest read Constable, CST, Mark Donovan. With an imposing stride and a loud voice, he approached her. "Hey, you know this is a busy road. Don't block traffic. Why is your scooter parked here?" he barked. Sarah instinctively looked down politely. "I'm sorry, officer. My scooter stalled. I'm trying to move it to the sidewalk but it's heavy." Her soft tone, however, was met with harshness. "An excuse? Kids today are nothing but trouble. Let me see your ownership and your license." Sarah grew nervous. She had just turned 17 last month, and had only just applied for her G2, the license hadn't arrived yet. She pulled out the ownership with a trembling hand. "Here's the ownership, officer. But my G2 license hasn't come in the mail yet. It's still being processed at the Service Ontario Centre." "CST." Donovan snorted. "Processing. That's what they all say. You think I'm that easy to fool?" He glanced at Sarah's dusty scooter. His eyes narrowed. "This bike isn't even yours, is it? Bet it's stolen." Sarah was stunned. Her voice began to tremble. "No, officer. It was my late father's scooter." But before she could explain further, Donovan snatched the keys from her hand. "That's enough. You're coming with me to the station. We'll check it there. We're seeing a lot of girls using stolen bikes lately." A few drivers stopped at the red light turned to look. Sarah hung her head, overcome with shame and fear. She tried to speak softly, to avoid embarrassing herself in public. "Officer, please, not here. I didn't do anything wrong." "But CST." Donovan grabbed her arm roughly. "Don't resist. This is procedure. Let's go." Sarah's delicate wrist was twisted, and her backpack fell to the wet pavement. Her textbooks and a small wallet spilled out. A few students walking by watched but didn't dare to come closer. The other, younger officer, named Amir, looked hesitant. "Sir, I think she's really just a student. Maybe we can just talk to her here." Donovan shot his partner a glare. "Quiet, Con. Don't be soft. You give kids like this an inch, they take a mile." Sarah fought back tears. She felt humiliated. But beneath her fear, a spark of courage, born from the pain, began to glow. She looked straight at Donovan. "Officer, I am just a student. I'm not a thief. If you want to check my record, please do. But don't pull me like this." Her voice was still polite but firm. "CST." Donovan felt challenged. Annoyed, he shoved Sarah toward the cruiser. "Enough talking. You can explain everything at the station." The rain started to fall harder. Sarah's clothes were soaked, her hair sticking to her cheeks. People began to gather, some filming with their phones. Donovan didn't care. His ego and anger had blinded his conscience. On the way to the satellite office under the Gardner overpass, Sarah was silent. She stared out the window of the cruiser, holding back her tears. Only one thought consumed her: how was her mother doing at home? When they arrived at the station, Donovan immediately ordered Sarah to sit in a cold, metal chair. "Now, be honest. Who owns that scooter? If you lie, this gets a lot worse for you." Sarah tried to explain, showing him the ownership and her health card for ID. But Donovan kept cutting her off. "ID can be faked. You can get those made on any street corner." Donovan then grabbed Sarah's phone without permission. He scrolled through it, then saw a photo of a man in a police uniform. "Who's this? Your boyfriend?" "A cop, huh?" he asked mockingly. Sarah took a deep breath. "That's my father, officer. My late father." Donovan let out a small laugh. "Deceased? Ah, a classic excuse. If you were really a cop's kid, you wouldn't be like this. Riding a beat-up old scooter with no license." Sarah fell silent. The tears finally came. Not from fear but from disappointment. Not just at Donovan's treatment, but at the reality that the uniform her father had worn with such pride was now the source of her humiliation. Outside the office, CST. Khan, who had driven them, looked uneasy. He spoke to another officer at the front desk. "Donovan is going too far. That kid really doesn't seem like a criminal. Can you check the plates on that scooter? Match the ownership." The desk officer typed the license plate into the computer. The result flashed on the screen: registered owner, SGT. Alain Tremblay, deceased, TPS 43 Division. The name made Khan freeze. He stared at the screen, making sure he wasn't mistaken. SGT. Alain Tremblay. Isn't that the officer who was killed in action 3 years ago? During that big drug raid? The desk officer nodded grimly. "Yeah, that's him. He's a hero in this division. Died saving a civilian from gunfire." Khan's face tensed. He quickly entered the room where Donovan was still grilling Sarah. "Constable Donovan, stop. This is important." Donovan, still standing over Sarah, turned around, annoyed. "What is it, Khan?" "I checked the ownership. That scooter is registered to Sergeant Alain Tremblay. This girl. She's his daughter." The room went silent. Sarah looked down, wiping away her tears. But this time, she said nothing. CST. Donovan's tone slowly deflated. But his pride stopped him from apologizing. "Well, I didn't know that." "But she still broke the law, riding without a valid license," he said, his voice softer. Khan stared at him. "Sir, don't try to justify this. You were incredibly harsh with her. If those bystander videos get out, it's going to be a disaster for our reputation." Donovan immediately looked out the window. Sure enough, a few people were still standing outside, some clearly recording from a distance. He started to panic. "Quick, go tell them to delete those." But Sarah had already stood up, her eyes locked on Donovan. "You don't need to worry about the videos, officer. If you apologize sincerely, I won't take this any further. But if you don't, I'll let everyone see how you treat a hero's daughter." Her words were calm, but every syllable seemed to slap Donovan's pride. For the first time, the arrogant officer was speechless. He could only stare at the young woman before him, wet, tired, but standing tall with a courage that shamed him. A few minutes later, the tension in the station eased. Donovan sat silently while Amir Khan gave Sarah his own police-issued rain jacket, and a bottle of water. I'm really sorry, Sarah. I should have stepped in earlier. Sarah managed a small smile. It's not your fault, CST. Con. Sometimes people forget that power isn't meant to be shown off, it's meant to be protected. The words hit home. Donovan heard them clearly, and though he didn't respond, his face was a picture of regret. That night, Sarah was finally driven home by Amir. Her home was a modest apartment in a low-rise building, its lights dim. Her mother, Marie Tremblay, greeted her with relief, though she looked pale. Thank God you're home, ma chérie. I was so worried. Sarah hugged her mother. I'm sorry, Mom. There was an incident on the way home. Marie looked at her gently. Even if people are cruel to you, you must never hate. Let God be the judge. Sarah nodded slowly. She knew her mother was probably right. But in her heart, she felt something was about to shift. A karma that would soon arrive to set things right. The next day, social media was buzzing. A 2-minute video showed a police officer yelling at a high school student in the middle of the street, then grabbing her arm roughly. The officer's face was clearly visible. So was the terrified expression of the girl he was berating. The video's caption was simple: Hero cop's daughter harassed by fellow officer. It had been uploaded by one of the drivers at the red light. Overnight, it had tens of thousands of views. The comments were flooded with anger and sadness. Many harshly criticized the behavior of an officer who was supposed to protect and serve. At 43 Division, the morning atmosphere was tense. All officers were gathered in the briefing room after the news reached their staff sergeant, S/SGT. Cole. Donovan, do you have any idea what you've done? The staff sergeant's voice boomed. CST. Donovan stood stiffly at the front, his face pale. I didn't know she was SGT. Tremblay's daughter, sir. Cole slammed his fist on the table. That's precisely the problem. It shouldn't matter who she was. Your job isn't to trample on people's dignity. He paused, looking at the silent room. Alain Tremblay was one of the most honest, decent men we had in this division. He died in the line of duty, leaving behind a wife and daughter. The same daughter you treated like garbage. Aren't you ashamed? Donovan looked down. It was a lapse in judgment, sir. A lapse. If it wasn't for CST. Con stepping in, that video would be even worse. You're lucky you're not facing criminal charges. Amir, sitting at the back, just sighed. He felt guilty for not stopping Donovan at the scene. But it was too late now. The staff sergeant continued. Effective immediately, you're on desk duty, pending a full internal investigation. And I want you to go to Sergeant Tremblay's home, in person, and apologize to his family. Understand? Donovan was stunned. 2. Her house, sir. Yes. You're brave enough to bully a kid on the street. Let's see if you're brave enough to face her family. If you have any dignity left, you'll go and apologize. That evening, Donovan went to Sarah's apartment. He wore civilian clothes and carried a small gift basket with fruit and groceries. His steps were heavy. In front of the simple apartment building, he could hear the distant traffic and smell food cooking from a neighbor's window. He knocked softly. A moment later, Marie Tremblay opened the door. She wore a simple housecoat, her face kind. Yes? Hello. Ma'am. Is this Mrs. Tremblay, Sarah's mother? It is. And you are? Donovan looked down politely. My name is Mark Donovan, ma'am. I'm the police officer who had the misunderstanding with Sarah yesterday. Marie's expression changed instantly, but she remained calm. Oh. Yes. Please come in. Donovan sat on a simple wooden chair in the small living room. A framed photo of the late SGT. Alain Tremblay in his dress uniform hung on the wall. Donovan stared at the photo, his head bowed low. Soon, Sarah emerged. She was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. When she saw Donovan, she stopped. Mr. Donovan? He stood up, his voice low and heavy. Sarah. I'm here to apologize. I know. I was completely out of line. I'm ashamed, especially after finding out who your father was. Sarah looked at him for a long moment before answering. I don't want you to be ashamed because of my father, officer. I want you to be ashamed because you realized what you did was wrong. Anyone treated that way would be hurt. Her words made Donovan look down again. I promise it won't happen again. Sometimes I forget. I wanted to be a cop to help people, too. But somewhere along the way, I got hard. My ego won. Marie sat down beside them. Everyone makes mistakes, officer. The important thing is knowing how to fix them. Donovan nodded slowly. He left the basket on the table. This is just a small token of my apology. Please accept it. Sarah looked at it, then at him. I accept your apology, officer. But please, don't let it end with words. Be the kind of officer my father was. The kind people respected for his goodness, not because they were afraid of him. It was a gentle reprimand, but it struck deep. Donovan looked into Sarah's clear eyes, then stood and offered his hand to both of them. I'll remember that, Sarah. Thank you for reminding me. Days passed. The video of the incident had gone viral, but after Sarah posted a statement that the matter had been resolved personally, public attention slowly faded. Quietly, however, the story made many within the police service realize that power without empathy only brings shame. Meanwhile, Sarah refocused on school. Final exams were approaching, and she was determined to graduate with top marks to get into a pre-med program at university. But something had changed in her. She was calmer, wiser, and more confident. One afternoon, as she helped her mother pack a catering order, a police cruiser stopped in front of their building. Sarah was startled, but this time, it wasn't Donovan who got out. It was Amir Khan. Good afternoon, Mrs. Tremblay, he greeted them warmly. Oh, hello, CST. Khan. Sarah's in the kitchen. I'll get her. Sarah came out, smiling. Amir. What's up? Don't tell me I'm getting another ticket, she joked. Amir laughed. No, nothing like that. I was just patrolling the area, and wanted to stop by. And to give you an update. CST. Donovan was transferred. He's moving to a detachment up north. Says he wants to start fresh. Sarah nodded. I hope he really does change. Me too. Oh, and one more thing. Amir pulled a large envelope from his bag. This is a letter of commendation from the chief for Sergeant Tremblay's family. It's been held up in administration for years, but it's finally been released. Sarah was stunned. A commendation? Yes. Your father was officially declared killed in the line of duty, and was awarded a posthumous honor. It's now officially being presented to his family. Marie looked at the envelope, her eyes filling with tears. Oh, Alain. They finally remembered your sacrifice, mon amour. Sarah accepted the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a certificate signed by the chief of police and the mayor, with the words, "For extraordinary bravery and selfless sacrifice in the protection of the citizens of Toronto, the late Sergeant Alain Tremblay is awarded the Medal of Valor." Tears of relief streamed down their faces. Not tears of sadness, but of closure after years of living in the shadow of their loss. Amir bowed his head respectfully. "I was just asked to deliver it, ma'am. I hope this brings some comfort." Sarah looked at Amir, a genuine smile on her face. "Thank you, Amir. Sometimes, God has his own way of showing that the truth always wins." Several months later, Sarah graduated as the valedictorian of her high school. At the commencement ceremony, the principal called her name. This year's award for highest academic achievement goes to Sarah Tremblay, a student known for her courage, integrity, and devotion to her family. The auditorium erupted in applause. Among the guests, Amir attended quietly, standing at the back. He watched Sarah walk onto the stage in a simple white dress, accepting her award with a sincere smile. Her face held a profound sense of peace. Not because of the award, but because of the difficult journey she had overcome. Meanwhile, far away, Mark Donovan was on duty at a small Ontario Provincial Police (OPP) detachment in Northern Ontario. There was no gridlock, no angry citizens to yell at, only fishermen, and the salty air off the lake. But it was there he found the peace he had lost. He often helped locals fix their boats, walked kids across the street, and even volunteered at the community center. One night, staring at the lake, he remembered Sarah's face, the girl he had humiliated, who had ultimately made him realize who he had become. He smiled to himself and whispered, "Thank you, kid. You taught me how to be human again." Years later, at a service at Toronto Police Headquarters, a young woman walked to the podium. She wore the crisp blue uniform of a constable, complete with her badge. Her name tag read CST. S. Tremblay. Yes, Sarah had eventually entered the Ontario Police College. Her dream of protecting her community, just like her father, had come true. In her speech, in front of senior officers, her voice was firm but gentle. "My father taught me that the honor of a police officer isn't measured by their rank or their power, but by how they treat other human beings. I learned that from him and from a painful experience that almost made me lose faith." The room was silent. Many were moved by her words. In the back row, Amir Khan smiled proudly. And at the very edge of the room, a man in a dark brown OPP uniform stood with his head bowed. CST. Mark Donovan. Their eyes met for a brief second. Donovan looked at Sarah with genuine respect. Sarah returned it with a small, knowing smile. There was no lingering resentment, only the understanding that people can change. Karma had run its course, not to punish but to awaken. 3 years had passed since that graduation. CST. Sarah Tremblay was now assigned to 51 Division, in one of downtown Toronto's most complex neighborhoods. She had become known as a young officer who was disciplined and honest. In her daily work, Sarah was often on the street, not behind a desk. That morning, the Toronto sky was clear. The air wasn't yet too hot. Sarah was in her full uniform, her hair in a neat bun. She was preparing to join a joint spot check with the traffic unit. Her partner, CST. Chloe Kim, approached with a cup of coffee. "Seriously, Tremblay. You're going out for the checkpoint? I heard some of the bosses are gonna be there." Sarah smiled faintly. "That's why. If management isn't on the street, how will they know what's really happening?" Chloe shook her head with a laugh. "You're something else. Most other cops, they get a little seniority, they want the desk, not the pavement. If my father were alive, he'd say, 'Don't just wear the uniform, understand what it means,'" Sarah replied, closing a file. The two headed to the checkpoint location near the Kensington Market area. The streets were already busy. Vendors, streetcars, and cyclists moved past. But amidst the chaos, Sarah saw something that caught her attention. A middle-aged man was being yelled at by 2 traffic officers. His moped was detained on the side of the road, and the man looked distressed. Sarah approached. "Good morning. Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" One of the officers, a large man with a thick mustache, turned. "Oh, morning, CST. Tremblay." "No, just this sir here who forgot his registration, so we're impounding his bike." The older man looked down. "I was just dropping my granddaughter at school, officer. The ownership papers are at home. I live right around the corner." Sarah studied the man. His clothes were worn, his hands were trembling, and a small elementary school backpack was in the moped's basket. "Where's your granddaughter, sir?" "She already ran to the school. She was afraid of being late." Sarah sighed. "Where do you live, sir?" "Just in the alley behind the market." "I can get the papers right now if these officers will just wait a minute." Sarah turned to the two officers. "If he lives nearby and is willing to get the registration, why don't we give him a chance?" One of them, CST. Novak, answered curtly. "Rules are rules, Tremblay. If we let everyone who forgot go, we'd be here all day." Sarah looked at him, her gaze sharp but controlled. "Rules are meant to ensure justice, CST. Novak, not to bully honest people." The air went still. A few onlookers whispered. Novak looked down. "Yes, ma'am." Sarah turned back to the man. "Sir, go get your registration. We'll wait here. Once you show it to us, you're free to go." The man's face lit up with relief. "Thank you, officer." "Thank you. May you always be blessed." After the man hurried off, Chloe came close and whispered, "Sarah, did you realize? The way you said that. You sounded just like those cops who yelled at you, all those years ago." Sarah turned, a small, thin smile on her lips. "Maybe. It's because I never want anyone else to feel that way." Chloe was silent, then tapped her on the shoulder. "Yeah. You really are something else." A few days later, Sarah received an unexpected summons from the head of 51 Division, Inspector David Chen. She was asked to come to his office that afternoon. "Please sit, Tremblay," Chen said as she entered. "I've been hearing your name a lot on the street." Sarah was surprised. "A problem, sir?" "Not a bad one. A lot of community members say you're fair, and you don't use excessive force. But some other officers feel you're too soft. That you're making their jobs harder." The implication was clear. Sarah looked her superior straight in the eye without fear. "Sir, if making their jobs harder means I'm stopping them from shaking down people for extra cash, then I accept the complaint." Inspector Chen sighed. "I know you're an idealist, Tremblay. But the world isn't always straight and narrow." "No, sir, it isn't. But our job isn't to bend with it. Our job is to try and straighten it." The words made Chen pause. Finally, he smiled faintly. "You're just like your father. He and I used to argue about things like this all the time." Sarah was shocked. "Sir, you knew my father?" Chen nodded. "We were in the detective bureau together. Alan was a good man. Honest but stubborn. I still remember when he was cornered during that raid. He pushed a civilian to safety before he protected himself. If you have that same spirit, then that same blood truly runs in your veins." Sarah looked down, moved. "Thank you, sir." "One more thing," Chen continued. "Next week, you're assigned to a joint operation in the Jane and Finch corridor. There are allegations of corruption within the ranks there. I want you on the inside, and I want you to report directly to me." Sarah looked at him, her gaze firm. "Yes, sir." The day of the operation arrived. The target was an old warehouse complex where illegal shakedowns by uniformed officers were allegedly taking place. The Joint Task Force was briefed that night. Sarah was there with several senior officers. But as the team geared up, Sarah felt a strange sense of familiarity. Among the team members, she recognized a face she hadn't seen in years. CST. Mark Donovan. The man who had once dragged her on the street was now standing in the same briefing room. His uniform was OPP, his face was older, but his eyes were far softer than she remembered. Donovan was just as shocked to see her. CST. Tremblay. You're here. Sarah offered a faint smile. Small world, Constable. He nodded respectfully. I've heard a lot about you. It's incredible. I'm proud of what you've become. Sarah simply nodded in return. In her eyes, there was no resentment. Only focus.